say we are very lucky we finally got rain, because last month it was very, very dry. And not really that hot, but dry. And so we started having problems with the river. And so some of the tours had been cancelled because in the natural part of the river it was really too shallow. So sometimes the guests had even to swap the ships, and they were coming to Regensburg by bus, because we have a natural stretch along the Danube between Passau and Regensburg, exactly the way we are coming from, yes? We're coming from Budapest to Amsterdam. And so that is, let's say, the problem child of the cruises on the Danube when the river is too shallow. Am I walking too fast for you? Because in case, please tell me. I can slow down. So these were all offices here for the harbour in the past, the ancient houses there on the left instead. These were normally handicraft, like blacksmith and so on. The ancient building here on the left, but was restored a few years ago. Very nice way, we have to say. But from now on, we have a huge spot where we have only very modern buildings. The reason why, World War II. Regensburg, normally they say, wasn't affected by the bombings during World War II. That's not 100% true, because it was affected by the bombings, even very bad bombings, but of things. The bombings hardly touched the city center, or the heritage part of the city. But the reason why the city center wasn't touched is that the target of the Allies were two, and these two targets were the harbor, so exactly this very area where we are in at the moment. That's the reason why they completely flattened this area here. And then the other important target to destroy was on the far end, on the west end of the city of Regensburg, where the Messerschmitt factory was, the factory producing airplanes during World War II. And so it got things. The first of these huge bombers got the target. And so normally, because once they started bombing, it was always good luck for the city if the first bomber was getting the target. So they all let most of the bombs fall on the right position. These are the Messerschmitt factory, and here on the harbour, that's the reason why the city centre, like a miracle, remained almost intact, and it's quite important. That's the reason why we have a UNESCO city to visit today, because it's one of the few cities in Germany which were not completely bombed during World War II, and where we have very, very ancient buildings. The origins of Regensburg are quite ancient, dating back to the 2nd century AD. But what do we see here? Well, as it is a very modern park, and they have the possibility to build this huge museum there, very often once you build something new, they always want to put a piece of fine art as well in the area. That's the reason why we have this golden statue. Try to understand what it is. You know, modern art is not always that easy to understand, but that should be a symbol for the Danube. So I have a tiny bit. This is a catfish. Yeah, you need a tiny bit of fantasy to see a catfish out of this statue, but it is. And the funny thing, I made a research over these two artists from Berlin, and I found out they made another statue very similar to this one here. It's in Japan, but over there it's a flame and not a fish. But the bottom of the head is completely the same. So they're very, very smart, these two artists, because they took the mold twice and the money twice for almost the same statue. Yeah. So So here we have brand new, you can say, few years old, and that's the house of Bavarian history. As you start hearing now, but then German people, well, they are all different from north to south, but Bavarian people are very, very proud to be Bavarian. And that's the reason why we have a house not of German history, but of Bavarian history. And funny thing, once in Italy I met my husband now from Regensburg, and they asked me where he was from. He didn't say I'm German, he said I'm Bavaria from And the lion, is the symbol of our state. Now Germany altogether has 16 states, and Bavaria is one of these. That's the reason why you see very often the lion. And if you look through the windows of this Bavarian History Museum, you see a quite particular lion in the middle of the hall, holding a stein of beer. Very typical as well. Where does this lion come from? The Oktoberfest. From this huge tent of Löwenbräu. Löwenbräu is one of the most famous breweries in Munich. And as we heard, that Regensburg was going to open a museum of Bavarian history, they gave this lion, which is normally at the very top of this huge tent, where during the Oktoberfest thousands of people fit in. They gave this one as a gift to the. Sure, you see on the stain they had to cover the brand of Löwenbräu. It wasn't fair. But it moves each 15 minutes, tossing, and there's a saying that you have to drink beer and so on. It's quite funny. And now they have a new one. And again, a lion on the top of this huge tent, the biggest of the Oktoberfest tents in Munich. So, what should you say about me? You see already the very heart of the city, because when you see the two beautiful spires of that North Church, that's our window. That's exactly the spot where all our tours end. So, in case you have friends or relatives in another group, we can later on pick up again with them when we all end at the evening. Now we are looking close to the river because I want to show you the hill, which is very close to this ancient stone bridge we have had. This is the stands a modern bridge, it's called just an iron bridge. On the left, we have stones there, very ancient, big stones. These are from the Roman era, but we're going to see another part which is more interesting. But these stones are from 179 AD. So that was the year of the foundation of this city. So it's one of the most ancient cities in Germany, also introduced while we are our heritage and the rest. So as soon as the traffic light turns to green, we can cross here, and then we go downstairs. Yes, the railing on the roof, you see that our roofs are very steep, and in the past, unfortunately not any longer, but in the past we had plenty of snow during winter time.
Okay.
And exactly on the side where people are walking, they have always sort of fences
Yes.
in order to retain snow from falling down altogether.
That's what I
Because
thought.
that will be
Yeah.
very, very dangerous. Unfortunately, our winters are getting too mild.
Yes.
Where the not really that much. Now my husband is skiing quite often, but this year, last season, he had really to look for snow. He went to go to the very high mountains in Austria and in Switzerland to find some snow because it's very, very difficult. And the problem is that in the past, most of the flights we had here along the river Danube, well, in the period normal of year, February, March, when snow was melting from the mountains. Unfortunately, now we have not enough So we never have floods during springtime, early springtime. Instead, as the Mediterranean Sea is heating up, the Atlantic Ocean is heating up, we have thunderstorms, but very bad thunderstorms during summertime. And we are not used, and even our trees are not used to these natural changes. That's the reason why very often, if we are going outside the city center, we don't see it here, but normally in the gardens, people have really huge trees close, very close to the houses. Now people are starting cutting off the trees because it's getting very dangerous for the house itself. Because of this very strong winds, they really are not used. So the last flood was last year in June, the very beginning of June. The one before was in 2013, and it was again the very beginning of June. And the interesting thing is that we're calling normally the floods the flood of the century, and because they were really almost one every century or two, but not more than that. Now we have a flood almost each 10 years. So the time between all the floods is getting shorter than we are used to. We're getting close to to the ancient stone bridge, and I have to say once in the 2nd century this area was the river. A borderline between the ancient Roman Empire on the southern side of it. And then on the other side of the river, we have this area where the German troops and the Germans, now and then they got organized and they were coming closer and closer to the borderline. And the river, the Danube, the Romans were calling the Danube as well as a Limes. And so, what happened in the south? That the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, he sent 6,000 Roman soldiers to defend the borderline. And once then the Romans saw for the first time these Germans on the other side of the river, strong men with this blonde, reddish, curly hair, and they didn't really feel safe, having only a river in between. That's the reason why they started building a huge fortress. And you see so part of the stones already belonging to that fortress. And they gave a name, Castra Regina. That means the fortress Castra on the Regen River. But why not Danube River? Because the Danube is very long, as you know, but there is a smaller river flowing from north to south into the Danube, and the name of that river is Regen. And as the Romans were very precise, they wanted to show exactly where the fortress was, exactly where the river Regen flows into the Danube. That's the reason why they call it Castra Regen, on the Regen. So then the Romans got away from this area, went on in the stream, and the Germans little by little started settling inside the area of the Roman walls. Simply then translating the name from Roman into German. So Castra Regina became Regensburg with the very same meaning, the fortress on the Regen River. The stone bridge you see, even if it's not really of importance, it's got Rome, and the Romans have no interest at all to connect themselves to the enemy. It's taking the very early Middle Ages. They started building everything in 1100 and 35. And it's been 11 years. And I think you have to know that by the time they were building the they are not able in the center part of Europe to build arches on themselves. Completely without the art to build arches. But this is our stone bridge. There's a lot of arches there. Nice bird goes away from the middle. What is it? I can show you a tiny bit in a more precise way where the river Regen is and where the former Roman part was. So this is a Danube River here. It is divided here in our area into three branches because of this island we have here. This is a stone bridge, you see, we are standing exactly here. This is a Regen River flowing into the Danube. So this was a German territory, and this was an ancient Roman Empire. And the first fortress built by the Romans was exactly this rectangle here. So at the very beginning, as you see, a lot of houses all together, because all the people then during the early Middle Ages wanted to build their houses within the ancient Roman city wall. But then in the 13th century, thanks to the stone bridge, the city became so rich. All rich merchants, a lot of rich people came to live here because they had the possibility to cross the river the whole year. So that there wasn't any space inside the ancient Roman wall. So they had to build a new wall in the 13th century. There's a huge wall all around, and they started building also outside the Roman wall within the medieval wall. But how comes? What happened? Why was it so important to have a stone bridge? Let's get close to it so that we have an idea. So please maybe that's behind you, and then we go closer to the river. In the meantime, because here, as we're talking about the floods, unfortunately they didn't put yet the flood mark of last year, but we have the flood mark over the flood before, over June 2013. So you have an idea how it looks like here whenever the river wants to be a bit more. So here we have this very line here, this word Wasserhöhe means height of water. June 2013, the river which is down here, means the complete ancient sausage kitchen and a lot of other buildings here on the city center were almost that's a big problem. This year it was even higher. This year, no, that's not sorry. It was up here. And here you see there's a flood line of 1893. February. So in the past, in the 19th century and before, they're always February and March. Hardly you see one in the summertime, but now it is exactly the different level. So later on, your meeting place at 5 o'clock for all the guests who want to stay longer is exactly near the sausage kitchen. Normally my colleagues were going to take you then to the buses. Staying on the sausage kitchen. There was a temple in this area here, and you're going to see them because I don't know what volleyball, but they have a right. So we'll see where they are. And as Regensburg is a very nice heritage park with nice shops and nice cafes, I think it's worth to stay a tiny bit longer in the city. But let's now get closer a tiny bit to the river. Please stay here because the pavement there is not really that even. There's very often affected by the floods. You see? So the Viking Regensburg becomes so rich once they had finished to build it down. Well, we have to mention in the very early Middle Ages, we had a quite nice temperature here in Central Europe, almost like in Italy nowadays. But then, later on, it became quite cold. So sometimes during wintertime, there were even icebergs floating on the river. And as people had not any longer, were not able to build arches out of stone, the other few bridges existing on the Danube River were made out of timber. But these bridges were too weak once then the icebergs were floating on the river. So they wanted always to dismantle their wooden bridges in order to spare the material for long winter times. That meant that you had not the chance to cross the river during wintertime for centuries. But then this gentleman here in Regensburg, he thought he was able to make a stone. So he started working on it. And the people living here in Regensburg, they were really surprised because they told me they really no idea how to make an arch out of stone. And so once they saw the first arches standing, they thought, there's something tricky going on here. How comes that these heavy stones are holding there without falling in the Danube? Hmm. So there were the rumors in the city saying that the master he wasn't working it out. The devil was helping him building the stone. The legend says that as soon as the master started building the bridge, he realized it was a tiny bit too difficult for him. But he didn't want to give up. Instead, he went to the devil and asked for help. And the devil told him, sure, I'm going to help you. But you have to promise. The very first 3 souls crossing the bridge are mine. And so once 11 years later the bridge was ready, he was standing on the opposite end for the celebration to cross the bridge first. The Bishop of Regensburg, the mayor, and his wife. Oh, the master felt pretty guilty about that, but he was quite smart and he had a solution. He took a dog and 2 hens and let these animals cross the bridge first. But this is only a legend. How comes that he was able to? I'm going to show you during our tour. But now, please have a look through the first arch. Can you see there's a very tiny iron bridge there? And I have to say that the whole stone bridge is originally from the 12th century, but of the first 2 arches we have closed off here. They were built during the they knew that the Allies were coming from north. That means they had to cross the stone bridge. Because that bridge was the only one existing. So the German soldiers bombed the 2 arches. So these were destroyed and rebuilt only in the late 60s. And in order then to cross the river, the soldiers, the Allies, they built this temporary, had it to be, temporary bridge you see there to cross the river. And then once in the 2006 Regensburg wanted to become a World Heritage Site, UNESCO said, no, but that is not in date, that was left. No, UNESCO always very And so they were thinking, oh, do we really have to dismantle this bridge? It's part of our history. So they could make a declaration that actually this is part of our history. World War II is even. It's not Roman, it's not Middle Ages, but it's history as well. And so they said, okay, you can keep that small bridge there, and that's perfect because now it's a pedestrian and biking bridge, and for all the people who are living in that area of Regensburg, it's ideal to cross the river because they have not to drive to the stone bridge. Also because it's now 11 years, the stone bridge is only pedestrian and for bikes and not for cars any longer. So you have another chance to cross by foot or biking the modern tiny iron bridge there on the other side. But now let's go to discover the secret of the master, how it comes that he was able to make stone bridge. On the table here, you see there's a bottle with a particular mustard. This is a sweet mustard of Regensburg recipe of wine culture in Regensburg. Special so that shop to find others. This is a very, very short cover last and as soon as it green is green of the car will to turn right ahead of us. So once it turns to green, right, we have no other chance. Otherwise, we'll off the street all together. There are some few like this main one here in front of us. That's why I would like for myself not able by doing the work in the city center and never have this around us. So here we go. Perfect. And another thing I think the white one is separated only in people. What direction they down the yellow building I would have on the right, that was a hotel in the 18th century. Quite famous German days on the days, say father German language. And he was on his way back home for that was in the 18th century. It was fashion for noble families to send their children, mainly men, to go to study and to see with the unity of ancient time past, maybe like say Italy and so on. And before Regensburg, the clothes was squeezed. I guess from the ship on the house. And so, you know, we go to Regensburg street. Also, the Roman Lodge inside the base. So, on its way back. The problem was a very shy person. And here in Regensburg, people recognized it. And so, after only 3 days, we decided then to leave Regensburg and to go away. So we had to stay almost a month in this area and that yellow house, but then we quite soon. So the huge building we have now on our right, that was a seat of the bishop, belonging to him, but not in this seat any longer. This has become his restaurant and hotel of the Bishop of Regensburg. But if you think about this huge wall you have over the rock, without revealing that anybody is what you see is all the actual wall. So we saw another part at the end of this wall. Here we have the most important part of it. Again,
Little bit too early. I went there 5, 6 years later.
Roman monument which really changed. Tower, Roman tower. The Romans were building their fortresses in the very same way, with a huge ancient Roman same model again on each side. But only this very gate, the northern gate, is still standing. The first time I came from Italy, from Rome to Regensburg 12 years ago, you know, my husband is from here and he's very proud of the Roman origins of his place. This was one of the first important things over the city he wanted to show me. And you know, I was a tour guide in Rome as well. So almost each day in the Colosseum. So you can pretty understand I wasn't that impressed with also the single Roman art. But we have to say that we have only two completely ancient Roman arches standing northwest the Alps. That means exactly this one you have in front of you. And the other one is the Porta Nigra in Trier, the Black Gate in Trier, which is about 4 hours drive from Germany. So during the Middle Ages, the smart gentleman living in Regensburg, sure, he wasn't helped by the devil, but by the fact that he, at least in Regensburg, he could see an ancient knowledge. And he understood that to put the keystone in the middle of the end was the solution, holding then all the other stones together, and then he could take out the mold made out of timber. And so he figured out how to make arches. He built the very first stone bridge. And why was it so important? Don't think that people were so nice you could cross for free. for centuries, almost 3 centuries, because then in Vienna they built another stone bridge. But until then, the Regensburg stone bridge was the only one you could even use during winter time. So for all the people, kings, dukes, even the emperor with his troops, once they had to cross the river, they were using the stone bridge, the only strong bridge we had on the river Dane. And people had to pay quite a lot of money to cross the river. That's the reason why Regensburg became this village from the 13th century on. That's the reason why, as well, all the people wanted to live here as merchants, because they had all the ways and river, taking them to the most important market of ancient time, Constantinople, just eastwards from here. And then the stone bridge taking them to the Baltic, where they could buy armor and other houses and so on, and come back again. So those were very, very important. And now we're going through history. We're going through this ancient part from the 2nd century AD. You see a dark square because they restored this Roman arch a few years ago, and they always keep a part to show us how it was looking before the restoration. So due to the air pollution during the Middle Ages, once they were heating houses with timber, sure, you see these cobblestones have become almost black in color. So try not to walk close to where the images are. It's black, but we don't really have that. So, very nice ones. On the northern side of the cathedral. And this typical brick picture. This town, the tower close to us, looks more ancient, and you're right, it is more ancient. That's Romanesque line. And there was a former church already standing, and it was built in the 12th century already. But then in the 13th century, there was a fire, and almost the whole upper part was destroyed, like what happened in Notre Dame in Paris a few years ago. So the bishop of the time, who had become very wealthy as well, he wanted to have a new church according to the fashion of the time, Gothic. So he ordered to destroy the former church and to build a new one. They kept the bell tower of the former church for 2 reasons. First of all, static reasons, because that's exactly the part where the hill goes little by little down to the river. And then the second reason is, that's also the nickname of our tower, Eselsturm in German. It means donkey tower, because thanks to these animals, they were carrying all the building material to the top. Oh, please, may I take a filming around this beautiful deer garden? The long chain. Yes, this is all Regensburg is one of the biggest growing cities. You can see there was an advertisement of bishops' as their dear call, because bishop call means exactly the same area. Bishop is Persia, the pole of the bishopric. In the past, it was part of the building, because where the seats are underground, you see there are some openings looking downwards, where the tanks of beer, they had no refrigerators in the past. So to keep beer fresh, they had all to use in all natural grottos, places underground, like they did here. And there's a beautiful big flowers, summertime, and very nice winter decoration as well. And later I have to see people here, and this restaurant, the beer garden. And then you see horse chestnuts. Horse chestnuts are very, very common trees in the area where we have beer gardens for shade, sure, but also for another reason. Because as normally the tanks of beer were kept underground, they wanted to have shade to keep beer fresh also during summertime, but they didn't want to have trees destroying with their roots the part which was underground. That's the reason why they were always using flat rooters, and horse chestnuts are flat rooters, so they were not going deep with the roots. So this night, on the pavement, goes to the gate, and United Baby goes to the gate normally. You see on the right the image on the gate, exactly on the height of the wheels. Because once in the past they were coming here to buy beer. Beer was in barrels, and were then bringing the barrels to the ships on chariots. So the chariots were always here turning right. That's the reason why you see exactly here the damage of the wheels of the chariots from the past. That really working at longer big so now it's is now we have a tiny bit of attention. This is one of the main streets of the city. In the morning, the trucks that by the shops. It's always good to stand at this side. Sunday and bakery and a sale for later on. Lot of other things most of the shop is some people can hear it normally. Now we have a comment, but I don't think that yes, I will show you that now it's see, yeah, it's you see, it's not even such a ancient city. Yeah, from here, I think. Oh, that's good. Yeah, you can stop here. Here we are safe, I think. Yeah, to restore an ancient building in the city center is very difficult because the streets are so narrow. It's ages now that they're working on this house. I hope they finish soon. It's very difficult for all of us to. Yeah. You are driving the thing. Since there's nothing looking at the house. And when you see a house with a facade painted with a story all the day, Bavaria. Wow. Do you remember at the very beginning of our tour, I was telling that for a time, Regensburg had become a free imperial city-state, and on the other side of the river, we had the Kingdom of Bavaria. Well, that was a quite long time from the 13th century to the 19th century. But in between, in the 16th century, something happened. But let's start from the beginning. The building itself is from the 13th century, from the golden era of Regensburg. So all the tower houses you see in Regensburg are all from the same period, the 13th century. The painting instead is younger, it's from the 16th century. What happened in Germany in the 16th century? What changed the mind of the German people? A monk, Martin Luther. This very small country, Regensburg, had become almost from one day to the other Protestant. So we had a Protestant country here on this side of the river. Instead, the Kingdom of Bavaria on the other side of the river, they were all still Catholic. So the two countries were not really good friends any longer. But the Bavarian people had to come to Regensburg because all the important merchants were living here with all the internal shops. And whenever they were crossing the border, that means the river, on the stone bridge, the first building was exactly the one you are looking at the moment. And that was the reason why in the 16th century, the Regensburg people said, let's paint a message for them. And so the message is hidden in the similar, in the story of David and Goliath, because the giant Goliath stays for the big kingdom of Bavaria. And Hannibal Cow is standing there, very proud of himself, and relaxed on the same time with the elbow on the window, looking to small David as if he wants to turn, look up, again, you're so small. But you see, small Davy, who stays for Regensburg, he is preparing his sling, and he's going to defeat the giant. And that was a message. Look, Bavarians, even if you feel so big and mighty, you're small, that's true, but you're very smart. So take care, as long you are here in our country. So it was really a nice way to tell them what they were thinking about the Bavarians once they went coming into this place. But now we're moving to the town hall, which is huge yellow tower with this block on it. These tracks stay all on the right because we have actually the part in the middle is the street, so cars on the right. We have a lot of
Jetzt darfst du jedes Tag, wenn du
It's not all bikes with backpacks because the tour along with the river Danube. That's so what you're doing on the river on the boat, they're biking. It's very, very nice. So I guess here we have another tower house. And well, you know already 13th century, so I have not to mention any longer because it's always the same. 13th century is yet ours. But here, you get this carton, okay? And so we have a big difference between the tower you see in front of you and the towers in the place where originally these towers are coming from. This is not a German way of building. This is an Italian way of building. Have you been to Tuscany, San Gimignano, for instance? Because if you have been there, you have seen such towers. Because it was typical for noble people and rich people in Italy to build with stones and to build strong tower houses. And normally in Italy, they were using the whole building because sometimes within the city wall, the situation wasn't really that safe. Here in Regensburg, instead, it became a fashion in the 13th century because most of the merchants living here in Regensburg were traveling very often to Italy, where they were buying goods but also selling other goods coming from the north. So they understood rich people in Italy were living in tower houses. So they wanted to introduce this new way of building here in Regensburg. And that's really unique. You won't see tower houses in other German cities. And these tower houses are completely different because here in Regensburg, the situation within the wall was very safe. It was the normal. They don't have such huge towers because those were very, very expensive. So they used the first 3 or 4 circles. You can do that. They're completely empty. Just to show off, just to tell the other part of the population, I'm a rich merchant. I can buy all of these expensive stones, building such a high tower, even if I do not need it at all. So it was a clear thing to wear a rich person. So nowadays, maybe you drive a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, in the past you had a tower house. It was always the same. But now we're going to the other tower house. We're going to the tower house. The 13th century, once Regensburg became a pretty imperious state, they wanted to build for the city council in the very same way and build it for the rich. So later on, we should already let you out because about the engineering rate and the area of the around the veins. We can find it later. Different three. We don't have to say that it's very no boundaries. First, why is our Baroque? It was built in the 17th century, and as you see, the 17th century wasn't really a good century for this city. You understand it if you look in a proper way the windows. Have a look. Normally, they use stones to make the decoration around the window and on the corner of the towers. Here is just stucco or painting because they had no money to pay for the expensive stone. And even if it's a a historical building, it's still the seat of our mayor. We have the main mayor, which is a lady, and then we have other two mayors. So we have all our three mayors have their offices in this borough. And you see taxes here are very bad, and Nick don't even have shoes on. So now it's the very often you come to have very clear there once they're coming from behind, so always pay attention. Near the middle we have the tree. I was moving one side. So our house and where the flag is on the left, that was the part where the city council was deciding all the important things for the city. It means the roads, but also dust. This wasn't their house. And the tower, which is twelve windows, was in use only later. And nowadays, it's still as part of the museum. If you go over on the left, but what is the where window and the tower are? This is where we have our civil weddings nowadays. And quite a lot of young people, they do only the civil wedding. It's very hard to see young people to organize their wedding in the church any longer. Problem is, a lot of people are going away from the church in Germany. It's really getting a social problem for different reasons. One reason as well is that the taxes in the church are quite high in Germany. And so people have declaration that they are not living at all, so they have to pay for these taxes. But that means that you cannot have a wedding inside the church, or a baptism for your children, so you have to think about it. Also, that's the reason why the lot of the are all on Friday. Town. The Imperial Palace, that was this huge yellow building. We see this pretty windows on the left. So whenever the emperor was coming, completely celebrated the Imperial city, the emperor was coming now and then, and he wanted to meet as well other people, other chiefs of other countries of this huge empire, which was called the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation. And whenever he was here in Regensburg, his throne was exactly this huge room there on the left. And the main entrance was exactly there where my colleague is standing with his guests. Can you see there on the top we have two statues, two small statues representing two soldiers. Can you see that? They have a nickname. They are called Schutz and Torz. What does it mean? Schutz is the soldier on the left. See, he has a hammer in his hand. Schutz in German means protection. Instead, the other soldier on the right, he has a rock in his hand. Underneath, you see the two crossed keys. That's our coat of arms. So, coat of arms of Regensburg are these two crossed keys. So, the mess to illustrate the imperial hall and other topics coming to entry was the following: that the theme here was to stay on Regensburg was able to develop shoots, and he to attack first in case of need to look on the other side. On the left from the entrance, can you see the three iron lines in the writing? Well, these were the official measurements. Official measurements for the merchants selling silk, brocade, whatever fabric. So we have this one on the left, which was a measurement of two outstretched arms. The small one in the middle is the foot of the shoe. The last one close to the door. It's the cubic distance between middle finger and elbow. But if you see, these measurements are huge. And each country, each city-state, have all measured their needs. According to how rich and wealthy the city was, the sizes were big. So it was a clear sign that Regensburg was a very, very wealthy city because of its sizes are really very big. So, my dear guests, do you have maps of the city? So we have it because we have this our tourist information center exactly where the guests are there. We can what? Oh, actually, that actually can be that. Hi. No, I only want one. Go.
Which part?
Keine Ahnung, ob sie change things inside the house. That's one to do is always to go to all about the city and ask for the colors you can use, the material you have to use. Sure, it is a must because all these houses are heritage. So first there's a bike coming in and you can cross the street. Oh, what wonderful. Spare for a short while. Soon all these trucks are disappearing. Nothing the whole time. Just supplying now our hotels and restaurants of the area. But very soon they're of the emperor whenever he was coming. So when coming to Regensburg, once he was organizing one of these important assemblies. So it's were called imperial diets. I'm sure they were eating a lot more. They were not having a diet. They were hunting and drinking quite a lot, but they were eating all together, and they were staying normally several weeks, some months. But Emperor now and then was even staying a few years in Regensburg. But the emperor was coming to Regensburg. He was never traveling alone for safety reasons. He had at least 300 people joining his journey. So you can pretty understand all these chariots and all these horses around. That's the reason why they kept this place free without buildings. Because they had all to arrive here, then these noble guests had to get off over the chariots, on horseback and so on. Then the servants were taking the horses to the stables, which were outside the city center, and all these nobles were living all around here on this very square. And the whole time they were on Regensburg, the city of Regensburg had to entertain these noble people, organize music, dances, and the whole hall here was very square. They were organizing tournaments, shows with horses, knights on horseback, with long spears challenging each other, exactly. Then, yeah, bring a tiny bit of information to the So there are such large buildings completely made out of timber. It's a very particular flavor of timber on the top, and then they do use those small tiles on the top. And that is a trick you have this fancy. Very cool. Something here? Here. See that we are even excited to the cathedral once just look at this massive spires of the building. But have a look here to the right, the white building and always the red building. Huge building here is a dormitory for students. Well, we have had a few after World War II that people didn't want to live in the city center, this heritage part of the city any longer. Das ist die Bavaria Garden. That is a nightmare. We have parking spaces, but they are almost all on the other side of the river. So you have a special permit, you can drive close to your house if you have to unload what you have to unload, but then you have to find a parking place. And very often then you have to cross the river, park your car there, and then to go back to distance. Maybe nice when weather is nice, but not really during winter time when it's freezing. That's the reason why they were really abandoned this heritage part of the city. But then in 1967, they opened the first university. Now we have 2 universities in Regensburg. And the mayor of the time was very clever to let people come again to the city center. He bought some of these huge houses of the city center, transforming these into dormitories for students. And so now we had then young people living in the very heart of the city. And so they wanted to go out, they wanted to go shopping and so on. So little by little, all the restaurants, all the supermarkets were opening again in a smaller way, but nevertheless, little by little, people were living again in the city center. And now it is one of the most expensive cities in Germany. The only city which is more expensive than Regensburg is Munich. We have Munich and Freiburg. Munich and Freiburg, and then we have Regensburg. There's a top 10 of the most expensive cities. Hidden yards like here with an Italian restaurant, Spanish one. So only in case of, let's say, emergency, here we have public facilities. That we have to stop, otherwise we keep going. What do you think? Do I have to stop here or can we keep going?
I need to stop, but I'll catch up.
Then let's stop here. So here you see that the houses very often with beautiful colors have a corner made out of a stone. That was to show that the owner was rich, but very often it's just the corner which is made out of stone. All the other part of the building that is made out of bricks and not of stone.
You see.
Okay, that's exactly where we are. Exactly. You better than me. That's where we are. And during nighttime, this city is also very nice. If you see the public illumination, they look ancient. But if you look at it in a proper way, you see a lot of tiny holes because the public illumination is made with LEDs. LEDs were invented in our University of Applied Sciences in Regensburg. And soon the city realized it was more convenient to use LEDs for the public illumination. So they switched all the public illumination to LEDs, but it's not white, bright. It is a quite warm yellow light. So once you're around during nighttime, it's very pretty. And then during Christmas time, as we have quite beautiful Christmas markets, it's really like you are in a fairy tale in a place from the Middle Ages. So very often, unfortunately, it's quite foggy because of the river, but it makes it even a tiny bit romantic if you're dressed in a proper way. Otherwise, it's all cold and wet.
You mentioned in the square about silhouetting and regarding weddings. What did you mean by that?
That in you mean what they
What is silhouetting?
silhouetting?
Civil wedding. Civil wedding.
Civil wedding.
Civil, okay. A civil
wedding.
wedding. I heard it all wrong.
So are we still missing guests? Yes, we are.
Ladies, it's empty.
Oh.
It's empty? Okay. Are the gentlemen missing? If you want to leave your husband here, tell me. We can run. Okay. Let's roll together. Thank you for waiting. Okay. So as you see, the reason why I told you, we're here in the city have sometimes too much. I know this really miles away from here. So you're turning right to one of the most picturesque alleyways of Regensburg. It's called Bavaria, like the composer BACH, which means Greek. So during the Middle Ages, we had not a street at all, no cobblestones. We had green flowing here. That's just the music was called Greek lane.
Das ist halt nicht.
Right through this great building soon. Where also the first upper stories and the second upper story again dormitories for students. So you have to say our students are very lucky. So not all of the possibility to live here in the city center, but quite a lot. They here in very, very few. So can you all see me because I'm going to disappear? No, follow me. Well, and still, we've been eating you see another inner yard, this pretty framework and a little timber protected by a net. The reason why pigeons. We had really a big problem with pigeons until about 10, 11 years ago. But then a gentleman working at the town hall, he had a fantastic idea. He said, because he didn't want to use poison and so on against pigeons, they introduced the very first couple of peregrine falcons. And these birds are excellent hunters. Now we have 3 couples here in Regensburg, and they're doing a good job. We have still pigeons, but not as many as we have. So even here, we have dormitories for students. That's usually where we have a lot of bikes here in the yard. You see this private ladies that goes downstairs because these were the ancient cellars, the refrigerators, all of these ancient houses. So, what do you see? Yes. Always better because sometimes you have part in this area. Because as I told you from then, you have and then back to well. Why are we stopping here? Because from here you see the highest tower of Regensburg, and that's really stunning because once you see that from far away, right, a tower, but once you stay close to this, and you'll think that they were built 1240, then 1245, something like that. Can you imagine to build such a high tower with the means they had in the past, in the 13th century? It's amazing, isn't it? And this tower here is called Golden Tower. Even if it's made out of stone. Sure, the fact to show off was not the only reason why they were building such high towers. There was another reason behind it. As stones were so expensive and you were hardly using the whole building, if you had financial problems, you could dismantle the upper part of your tower, selling the steps, getting money to sort of, let's say, investment. In fact, have a look there on the left. There's a shorter tower with a normal steel roof on the top. That family had financial problems, so they decided to sell the other stones, and then if you solve the problem, they would almost leave at the top, and they could live without problems with the money they got from the stones. And the fact that only rich people were able to build with stones is reflected as well in the modern German language. Because if you want to say that the person here in Germany is very, very rich, you say that this person is steinreich, stone rich. So normally a stone broken in Germany is that steinreich, stone rich. And it comes from this habit of the 13th century. But now I think there's no long. The street is mine is very tricky stretch and the very same color of the painting. Houses are just quite pretty. And average you see, you know, the Middle Ages, that houses were painted. Oh, yeah. These houses belong to more people. You see the coat of arms of the families on. Maybe the arch was decorated with flowers. But you see this typical side, and you see there was with a hammer, they were destroying these colors. Why? Whenever there were bad diseases, plague, like that, and so on, during the centuries in the past, they had no idea. They thought that the colors were bringing these diseases. So very often they were then putting lime milk on the walls to disinfect the walls. Or take case as a gentleman was to come through.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's exactly. Fun? This is swallows. These are swallows. Yes. There are a lot of swallows in the city. Oh, thanks. It's the nest. Yeah, it's the nest of it. So they were always covering this ancient frescoes on the walls. That's the reason why at the end most of the houses were looking white, because of the milk, the lime milk they were using after these diseases to disinfect the buildings. Even inside the churches very often, because churches were the places where all the people were going. So after that diseases they had the churches as well. So very often the were covering with lime milk. They had the paintings and lime milk get on the paintings. They had to make this holes with a hammer. So soon we're going to that. Corridor more.
Also the traders of the month. So if you wanted to buy something back in village here in town,
So here we are really in the most ancient part of the city. Because here we are still within the Roman city walls at the beginning in the early Middle Ages. They all wanted to build within the wall, the Romans. So you can understand over the summertime it's very hot here, never fresh air. And then we have only tiny windows. The rooms are almost dark, so during nighttime as well you have the light very often. Is the area where most of the antique and jewelry shops are. In the past, this was the area where people would find very cheap materials. And have a look here, there's a house built in a quite funny way, because you see that on the street level it is smaller, but then from the first floor on is bigger. Very bad. Because during the Middle Ages, you had to pay the tax for your house only for the parts touching the public soil, so people are touching the street. So if we were building like this, people were building fast, you had not to pay more taxes, but from the first floor on, you had more space. That was quite clever. See, construction. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Almost under construction. I'll tell you what happened here. We have a tradition of nature, quite famous. The last. So that's my name. Across the street here is nog een taxi driver. This man is. So, please come and take a look around but little also the other coming now heading to the cathedral. So, we already saw the northern side of the church from the yard belonging to the bishop. It's the main and the western side of the building. Well, what's happening? One scaffold, while the others. Oh, what's that? The 30th century they. Start using stone quarrying nearby. Sandstone, always very close to the city center. But then, while building that stone was a tiny bit too soft, so they had to switch to another stone. Another stone was far away. But far away, the white limestone. There will be a building, as you see, and follow the left side of the church. Can you see where the left white tower ends and the gray spire starts? It's exactly a light where the white ends and the gray starts. What's the height over the building they had built in the 60s? Then no, the city became just so they didn't want to finish the church. You have to think about the fact that this church had all its for almost 300 years, from the 16th century to the 19th. What happened? In the 19th century, once the royals were back, they were not only building the villa close to the ship, they only wanted this Catholic church. The city had to become Catholic. So they wanted to build the two spires. The problem was we are in modern times, 19th century, and it was very hard and difficult to find people who were able to work stones in the way they were during the Middle Ages and even to pay for that. And that's the reason why it felt well. We can use even modern material. So they didn't use stones at all. Only the spires are completely made out of carbon. And that's the problem of our villa. Have a look. Where are they working? They are working on the right spire there. Because unfortunately, as concrete has iron inside, this iron is always moving during our hot summers, cold winters, and now and then we have parts full. 2 years ago, a big part fell down from the right side. And for that, they were fixing one on the left side, so they will never ever finish to restore this church because once they fix one part, another one is broken. And it takes 1 million euros a year to maintain this church in a proper way. Only to hire all this equipment is quite expensive and big. And well, it is really a very, very big church. You can see it from here, but if you go inside, and you see the door on the left,
There's a sea, none of them. You see the only from inside, not from outside. So once you go inside, it takes a short while to adjust your eyes into the quite dark, but then you have a beautiful thing. One of the first colorful thing in this we have in Germany. Yeah? Same return they are posted and were same protected. Two big windows and the toss. You can roll it first down. Take the ball with the javelin and keep in his hand. That's Saint Peter. It's a symbol of the Saint Peter are the two kings. Because in a symbolic way, Jesus Christ gave him the devotion for the empire of heaven and the silver fleece for the empire of earth. That's the reason why we all and one of the two. Not the wine is sitting in a boat. It's not just an area for river cruise. It wants to give us a very nice impression. That also a person of intelligence can become because he is the first one. So that is a very, very nice question. Also, so my goodness, before we end our tour, you know your ship, there's a so you have to pay before noon to 12, you should be back board. How do you get back home? Big and big. In order to get back from here to the ship, you already know that you're going downhill this direction. So if you walk downhill this direction, going straight ahead, you have a building in front of you. So you have to turn right and turn left. You already see, once you turn right, you see the river, then you turn left, going downhill, and you can halfway really close your eyes and follow the nose. So the sausage kitchen is down there, and now we'll smell it. So it's very by the way. And once you're back to the river, so now the river, you have to turn right, keep going, and then you're back to the ship. It is that we want to have a very nice glance of the whole city. We have a particular form of the stone. And how they have a form, we have a small statue. If exactly there, but the small statue is on the top. You turn around and you look at the city. You see all the heritage houses. You see it's very, very pretty. How do you get from here to the stone? Very easy. You walk downhill. But then you turn left. You remember where I told you there's a bakery? There where the bakery is, you turn left, right, then you see the house with David and Goliath, where they were also restoring the house. Playing, all of David and Goliath, and you're found it. It's like we always have the stone. You have this beautiful dance on the whole city center offering it. For the guests who instead have the afternoon to work with that, but frankly from here, that's something that last, the meeting point at 11:45. So I hope you had a nice time discovering together Regensburg. If you look up we don't have that much, but if you go into restaurant, into a cafe, and you see have cafes in all the area around. And then a very nice square is if you go straight ahead, you know, these two blocks, there's another house. Over there we have also a lot of nice cafes and restaurants. It's a very, very nice area. It's like a church. Jewish but inside the church we have drawings in pictures of the former Jewish quarter, so that's quite interesting. And the entrance even in that church is for free. So, my dear guests, I wish you a very pleasant stay in Regensburg. I hope you're staying longer because it's really worth to stay a tiny bit longer. I wish you a very safe journey back home. Thank you very much.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, well, yeah, but
Yeah, but
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
it's
that
about
in
an
Germany
hour.
they all make this like very good black, but it's not a very good one. It's heavy, but it's open.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Goodbye. Thank you.
Let's take a quick walk counterclockwise or clockwise. What?
Can't go in there.
Oh, okay.
Take off your hat
Oh, yeah, right.
and no pictures.
Very good beer. Very light, like probably a wheat beer. And our waitresses are dressed in lederhosen. Real typical Bavarian beer. Pub. This is owned by the bishop.